So, Shahid, controversial character, big in the news this week. You've obviously spoken about growing up in Birmingham, being involved in the youth gangs. That kind of led you down a path that I guess now you've said that you regret. Can you tell me a little bit about your childhood in Birmingham and what that was like?
I'm a product of, or I grew up in the 70s and 80s on the streets of Spark Hill in Birmingham. And that was a time, it was very different to now, when white racist gangs used to roam the streets. They would come into our area, well, not our areas, but they'd come into the areas and they would beat up our mothers and steal their gold, beat up the little kids. And that was a common thing that used to go on all the time. There was a lot of racism, National Front. It was quite, there was a particular gang in our area called APL, which stood for the Anti-P League. They used to even have tattoos on their knuckles, A, P and L. They used to tag the walls with APL. So that was the environment that I grew up in. And for me, it all sort of started when I was 11 years old. I was attacked and beaten up by a gang of skinheads, grown men, 11 years old on my way to school. So that was my upbringing, or that was my welcome to the world that you're about to step foot in.
Now, obviously, this background led you to plotting bomb attacks. Why should listeners or sort of voters listen to a word that you say?
Well, first and foremost, the actual charges against me, as I did from day one when I actually got into court in 1999, I denied all the charges. I told the judge that I was tortured, that the charges, were all false and made up.
But every appeal that you did do did fail.
Well, no, because as far as the law is concerned, this happened outside the British jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. So, like on my DBS, I don't have anything on there. My DBS is clean, other than the conviction that I have in this country, which was in the mid-90s for some other stuff that was happening here.
What was that conviction?
That was just around some of the stuff I got involved in around fighting and violence and stuff like that.
Right. Okay.
Look, let's be clear here. I'm not trying to make out that I'm this goody two shoes kind of guy. Yeah, I've had a checkered past. I've been involved in stuff that I do regret, but you have to understand the circumstance that I grew up in. I didn't grow up in a privileged society or in a privileged family or in a privileged way. I grew up on the streets.
You can understand why the British public sort of have their back up about it. You obviously were involved in attacks that were planned against a British consulate, a Swiss hotel, among other things, a church as well. What exactly innocent people were meant to die in these scenarios? Did you ever think about that? Did it ever cross your mind?
The question doesn't really make sense because nothing happened. Nobody died. Nothing got blown up.
But there were plots going.
According to them, according to the prosecutor, according to the Yemeni government, that's what they said. But that was not the case. Nothing actually happened. There were no plots. It was all fake and planted evidence. The reason, the crux of all of this is this. At that time, Britain and the West in general were calling Yemen a hotbed of terrorism and supporting Al-Qaeda. They're calling it a failed state and all of that sort of stuff, yeah? When we got arrested in Yemen, they switched the narrative around and say, well, hold on, we're not exporting terrorism. You, the British government, are exporting terrorists by sending these guys over to do terrorism over here.
Why were you in Yemen then in the first place?
I suppose that's the $1 million question, isn't it? That everybody wants to know. So if you weren't going there for that, then why did you go?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of like with the Shamima Begum type of thing. I mean, you sort of fall into that category of you left a cozy, comfy life in the West to go off to a country where there was a lot of extremism. So
you need to go back a little bit. From 1992, when I went to Bosnia, I went on a different trajectory altogether. Mm-hmm. So in 92, I was in Bosnia fighting with the Foreign Fighters Brigade against the Serbs. Then after that, I went to Afghanistan. So I was in in this whole kind of military environment. Yeah. Just for the record, I've always wanted to be a soldier since I was a kid.
Right.
I tried to join the British Army twice.
Okay.
To the Royal Marine Commandos, and I failed the test twice. In my naivety, I thought I would, get accepted, but they're not going to accept a Pakistani, kid.
Is that the reason that you failed the test?
I passed everything else. They asked me to do pull-ups. I did 9 pull-ups. The minimum is 8. They asked me some other questions. I did all of that. I sat down. I answered all the questions. So they failed me twice.
Did that then fuel a sort of hatred for the West that made you think that you should go and sort of seek other options?
No, I've always been rebellious. whether it was my parents or whether it was society or whatever it is. That's just my nature. I'm not a conformist. I don't conform. I ask questions. I challenge.
But there's being rebellious and then there's being a convicted terrorist. You know, I feel like they're two different things.
Unbeknown to me, the sheikh of the tribe that I aligned myself with was a hardcore anti-government tribe, which was being watched by the intelligence services. So when I turned up, you know, they're like, all right, who's this guy? You know, and then obviously they thought, okay, and then a couple of other guys turned up. Literally, they thought something.
You didn't know that he was this
I didn't know,
Islamic extremist,
no,
essentially.
Not at all, no. And that shows you that even then I was still naive. You know, right. I'm not making excuses. At the end of the day, I made the bed, I have to lie in it, and I take responsibility.
Well, you served 5 years, didn't you?
Yeah, I saw, you know, so I was a little bit naive. Obviously, when I look back now and I'm thinking, what the hell was I thinking? You know, I didn't even do my homework. I didn't check anything out. I just landed in this country randomly. And the first guy that shook, you know, literally almost the first guy that shook hands with me in the mosque when I was praying, I became friendly with them. And I said, oh, look, I'm trying to do this. He goes, yeah, come to me. I'll give you space. And I'm the leader of a tribe. And I'm like, oh, okay.
It's very naive to sort of fall
but
into
that's
the
just
trap.
the way I am. That's how I ended up in Bosnia.
You now condemn Islamic extremism without any qualification?
Again, you need to.
So yes or no?
No,
I mean,
but we need to define what we're talking about here. If you're talking about groups like ISIS and Al Qaeda, of course I condemn that.
Right.
Yeah, they're
what
criminals.
About Hamas?
Hamas is a legitimate group that is fighting for the freedom of the Palestinians.
Okay, so they're not a terrorist organization.
No.
Okay, so October the 7th, that was justified?
October the 7th was a reflection of what was going on there. I'm against the killing of any innocent civilians of any religion. It's not acceptable. And if that's what's happened, and as it seems that is what happened, then obviously it's condemnable.
What you're accused of is trying to blow up British institutions. So how should we trust you to now run one?
Well, I can tell you one thing. I'll do a damn sight better job than the current Labour incumbents that are sitting there right now, who have turned our city into a dump. We have councillors that don't speak English, that can't read and write, and yet they're getting elected. Why is the Labour allowing these kind of candidates to be elected? I will do a much better job than them. And like I said, I'm innocent of all the charges that were leveled against me, so I wasn't plotting to do anything. And for the last 30 years, almost 30 years, that's the question. What have I been doing in those 30 years since then? I've been working in the community. I've been working with West Midlands Police around antisocial behaviour and drugs and anti-gangs. I've worked with the Home Office on de-radicalisation programmes. Mm-hmm. I am one of the main guys on this de-radicalisation programme. Why? Because of my background.
Would you be happy if a convicted far-right sort of extremist or terrorist stood up for council? Would that be okay?
Yes, if they're a reformed character.
You did post this video that's now kind of gone a little bit viral and it's quite controversial. You said Muslims are not pacifists. If someone comes into your face, knock his teeth out. That's my message to the youth.
Remember, Muslims are not pacifists. If somebody comes into your face, you knock his teeth out. That's my message to the youth.
If he has any teeth.
You said Muslims are not pacifists. If someone comes into your face, knock his teeth out. That's my message to the youth. I mean, why should anyone believe you're some sort of force for calm or unifier, as you claim to be, if you're sort of advocating for knocking people's teeth out?
Controversy sells.
Is that what you're trying to do? Launder your reputation through the ballot box?
No.
A lot of people are accusing you of that.
I don't need to do stunts to make myself known. I'm already a known person. You know, this is not my first.
I mean, but this was a pretty recent comment. You know, when you say you're a reformed individual, but you're saying that someone to knock someone's teeth.
Yeah,
out.
I'll clarify that. Under British law, yeah, and everybody needs to go and check this, and maybe you can put it in the comments.
Yep.
Under British law, you are allowed what's called a preemptive strike. So if you feel that your life is threatened, if somebody comes in your space, you don't have to wait for that person to hit you. You are allowed to hit them. This is British law, not my law. The law of the land allows me to do that. So I was referring to that. If somebody comes into your space, if somebody comes into your face, if somebody's saying to you, I'm going to F this, that, whatever, I'm not waiting for him to pull a knife and stab me or to punch me in the face. I'm saying that the law allows me to do a preemptive strike. So I'm going to do a preemptive strike. And my preemptive strike more than likely will knock their teeth out.
So you would say to the Sparkhill people, defend yourselves, kick people's teeth out if they come near you, etc. That's something that you would advocate for as a councillor.
As a Muslim, I'll say it again, I am not a pacifist. I don't believe in turn the other cheek. My religion doesn't teach me that. My religion does teach me forgiveness, yeah, but an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. This is how we are as you know, as a Muslim and as a man.
Are you Muslim first and British second? Is that how you see yourself? What type of order would you place that in? Because it seems like your Muslim faith guides a lot of, you know, how you might do policy.
My ethnicity is Pakistani and my religion is Islam.
And what informs majority of your decisions?
Well, I live in Britain, so I have to abide by the laws of the land.
When you tell people, you know, to go kick people in the teeth, when you are
in
a position of, but when you are in a position of power, you know, that's going to be that might be incitement to violence.
Look, people are entitled to their opinions. You know, people can say whatever they want. I'm not going to please everybody. You know, at the end of the day, I think this is the crux of the matter here. What we have is a history of politicians that just say what everybody else wants them to hear. Mm-hmm. They want to be politically correct. They're full-time politicians. All they care about is their career, about getting re-elected again. I'm not a politician, and I'm not looking at a political career. I don't care about any of that. This is why I'm standing as an independent. I don't have to answer to anybody except the people that voted for me or for my constituents. They're the only people that I have to report to. But at the same time, if somebody comes into my face, if somebody threatens my life, I'm going to knock his teeth out.
So you are listening to the Islamic principles when you're basically living your life. You do, obviously you live it via Islam. So it just seems like everything is rooted in Islam, which is totally fine. It's just interesting to know about you as a candidate.
Okay, so I get where you're going with that. Okay, let me just clarify. I am a Muslim and I believe in Islam. I live my life according to the teachings of the Quran and of the Prophet, peace be upon him. That is my first and foremost. And anything that clashes with that, I have to then, you know, look at. For instance, I'm not allowed to drink, but in this country, you're allowed to drink alcohol. Now, as long as alcohol is not being forced down me, you can do whatever you want. It doesn't bother me.
End this on a positive note, because it's been really interesting to hear about your life story. I think it's so...
We haven't really scratched the surface of it. But
I know. I could talk to you for hours, because it is really, really intriguing. What do you want to do for the community of Sparkhill?
Look, my dream for Sparkhill and for Birmingham in general is to make Birmingham into the best city in the UK. You
seem really ambitious. I mean, number 10, is that a thought in your mind? Could you be the first Prime Minister of Britain with a terrorist conviction?
I don't think my political ambition takes me that far. I'll say it to you now. My thought process is that if I get elected, I've got 4 years. In 4 years, my vision is to have somebody from the younger generation stand in my place.